Hey everyone, I'm Eric Thomas of Eric Thomas Studios. For today's fundamentals video, we'll be going into brushes, a part of Photoshop that every discipline that works with images uses. Now when I say every discipline uses brushes, that isn't hyperbole. Everything from painting to photo retouching to special effects and masking uses brushes, assuming they're using Photoshop, which eventually they all pretty much do. This isn't something that's just limited to the brush tool either. There's a lot of tools you'll use, from the eraser to the healing brushes and dodge and burn tools, and they're all based around the brushes. It's a debatable thing for sure, but I think it's probably one of the most important controls to get down if you really want to use Photoshop. And now that I've said that, how do you control brushes? The quickest way to change your brush's settings will be to right-click in your canvas when you have a tool that's using brushes. This will open a context menu where you'll have your settings. The first of those settings will be the size. This is how wide your brush is, which with the default brush means a smaller or bigger circle depending on which direction you move the slider. You can also use your bracket keys, when the menu isn't open, to switch sizes as well. The left bracket will shrink and the right bracket will expand it. Our next control after that will be the hardness. How hard or soft your brush is will change the blurring around the edges of the brush. It should be noted here that the brush tool is by default anti-aliased, which means even at 100% hardness, the edges of your brush will still have a few pixels of blur. If you've ever used the brush tool to do line art and then gotten weird gaps when filling in with solid colors with the paint bucket, this is the reason why. To the left of those two controls, you'll have a small white circle with two dots and a small triangle on it. Those things let us change the angle and direction of our brush. The dots on the top and bottom, when we drag them up or down, will make the brush larger or thinner. This is controlling the brush mark or tip, which is the actual shape our brush is using, as opposed to the size, which will change how big or small your brush mark is. If we drag the triangle around instead, that will change the direction of the brush. This lets us tilt and rotate the brush so that we can have angled marks. And under all of these, we have our brush presets. These are pre-built brush marks we can click on to automatically set the brush to the settings of whichever mark we click. By default, they're pretty sparse though. To give us more options, click on the small gear icon on the top right. This will open up a second menu. Down near the bottom of that menu will be a list of words, such as assorted brushes, natural brushes, etc. Clicking on these will open another window asking you to click OK, append, or cancel. Cancel just closes the window, while OK will load the preset you clicked into the presets window, replacing the ones you had loaded. If you click on append instead, it'll add the preset you've picked to the bottom of the presets list under all the other brushes that you've already had loaded up. Up near the top, we'll cover the top three later. Under those though, there are a few other things back in that menu too. You'll have things like text only, list, thumbnail, and some variety therein. Depending on which one of these we click, the menu's presets will be organized differently, with bigger or smaller icons in a grid in the case of thumbnails. Lists, meanwhile, will make each brush a bar that goes across the window, either really small or a bit taller based on the option. At the bottom, the stroke thumbnails will make it into a list, and will give you a preview of what the brush mark looks like in a long line across the list. Under that, the presets manager will be coming next, so the next option is the reset brushes. Clicking this will reset your brush presets back to the basic preset, removing any changes you've made and any unsaved brushes. If you have an ABR file or Adobe Brush file, we can click the Load Brushes option and load that file in to have the brushes contained inside it. This is the same thing that Replace Brushes will do, with the difference being that Load will just add the brushes from the file to your presets, while replace will make the file into the only loaded presets. Save brushes will let you save a selection of brushes as that ABR file. Now, if we click on Preset Manager, we'll open another window. This is pretty much the exact same as the presets in the last window we had. The gear icon will have the same options as the last window as well. The difference is that it's bigger so we can see more information, and we can click and use Command or Control to click on other brushes to select more than one at a time. We can also click one, hold down Shift, and click a second to pick a whole range of brushes. Why this is useful at all is that you can save those selections as a brush set, which lets you be more selective with the brushes being saved into your ABR file. You can also, using those same selections, rename and delete the brushes you've picked. Back in the canvas, we have a few more controls up at the top of the program. That first bar under the one with the close and minimize will always have extra settings for any given tool you're using. This is a good thing to keep in mind, not just for Photoshop, but for pretty much any Adobe software. In the case of the brush, the number on the far left is going to be the size control again, set in points. You can look up at this when using brackets to know exactly what size the brush is, which is nice if you're zoomed in and forget how things are scaled currently. If you click on the arrow to the right, this will actually open the same window under here as right-clicking in the canvas does to change those settings. The button next to that opens the brush panel, which I'll be going over in another video down the road, because it's pretty extensive and I'm trying to avoid any more 20-minute videos ever. Right of that though, it's a box with the word Normal. This is a drop-down for the brush's blending modes, which will change how each stroke works with the colors under them. These are mostly the same as the usual blending modes, with two exceptions. The Behind blending mode will paint behind other brush strokes on the same layer. This works wherever there's transparency in a layer that's highlighted down in your Layers panel. The other new blending mode that you'll find is Clear. This essentially makes your brush tool into an eraser, letting you brush out content on a layer. Or you could just use the Erase tool. Next to our blending modes, we also have another number, which by default is probably 100%. This is our opacity, or how transparent each brushstroke will be. The lower the percent, the more you'll be able to see through the strokes. This is especially useful for building up your values if you're doing painting or illustration in Photoshop. You can also shortcut these by using the number pad on your keyboard. 1 through 9 will change it to 10 to 90%, while 0 will make the brush 100%. You can also type one number quickly after another, like 1.5, to go to more specific percentages, in that case 15. Next to the opacity is an icon kind of like a pen inside of a target. This toggle lets you set it so the pressure you're using on a pressure-sensitive graphics tablet will determine the opacity of the stroke. It goes without saying that if you don't have a pressure-sensitive graphics tablet like a Wacom, that's not really going to be very useful for you. If you do have a tablet like that though, lighter presses will be more transparent and harder presses will make it more opaque with this. The last number in our top bar is the Flow. Flow controls how much of our foreground color is being applied each time we click with the brush. To the right of that is yet another icon that looks like an airbrush, which is the airbrush. The airbrush toggle will make it so you can build up brush strokes while holding down a click, where normally you need to let go and click again to do that. Also, with this toggle activated, your numpad will change the flow percent, not the opacity. And last in the bar is another target icon. This will do the same as the other one, except the pressure here will control the flow instead of the opacity. And that was all about controlling Photoshop's brushes. I recommend experimenting with this as much as possible and seeing how it works with all the tools at your disposal to really get this down. I hope everyone's learned something and had fun doing it. If you have any questions, thoughts, or other feedback, you can let me know with a comment below, or with a message to @ET_studios on Twitter. You can also like this video and share it around. I'd appreciate the help getting the word out. And if you did like this, I'm planning a future video on how to make custom brushes using photos in the future, along with all the other videos I do every Friday, so be sure to subscribe for those. Have a great day, everyone.